Hello ladies and gents, good morning, welcome to another video, thanks very much for watching. So today, doing something a little bit different. I'm here with this Hobao Hyper SS, and this truck, this buggy doesn't belong to me, this belongs to one of you guys. So somebody got in touch with me on Facebook saying that they're having problems getting this started, and pretty much that they hate it and they want me to help them love it again. That was his words, not mine. So I'm going to help him love it again. I don't want you guys hating Nitro, because when people hate Nitro, that's when people go over to brushless, and we don't like brushless here, do we? Just joking. So today we're going to get this one fixed up and hopefully get it running. It's not even been broken in. It's pretty much brand new. It's got lots of fuel residue on it because unfortunately during shipping the fuel leaked everywhere, but it is actually brand new, so we should be able to get this one started, broken in and nicely tuned for him before we send it back. So I figured I'd do this video, not sure where it'll lead, not sure what we need to do to it, so we'll just see how it turns out. So let's go over to the table and have a look at the car, see what we need to do first. So here's the car then, and as I say, it's brand new pretty much. You know, there's it's very, very clean. He did say that he's managed to snap off the pull start, so he has included a new pull start that we need to fit. So that's the first thing I think I'm going to do, and get this new pull start on. It's the COPS type pull starter. Not my favourite pull starter, but it's obviously the one that it came with, so we need to get that one fitted onto the car. Now, there's always a little complication. When I turned the car over just now, you can see that one of the engine mount screws has got the end of a screwdriver or end of an Allen key snapped off inside. You can see this is what I discovered. So I'm thinking, you know, obviously there are more ways of, to be honest, you don't really need to remove the engine to change the pull start anyway. You can do it without, but ideally I'd like to get this issue sorted if I can. Like I say, there are ways around it, so I'm not going to put a ton of effort into sorting this particular little issue, but it would be nice to be able to sort it. So the I can't grab it with the pliers, there's just not enough of it sticking out in order to get enough purchase on it. So it is actually wobbly in there, it's not just falling out. Okay, so I managed to remove it, which is good. Here it is the culprit. And I used one of these things. These are very, very handy. If you haven't got one of these, get one. You can normally find them in Halfords and stuff. They extend, and it's just a magnet, so I was quite lucky with this one. I was just able to literally, and it just came straight out. So there you go, there's the snapped Allen key bolt. So what I'm going to do now is remove these 4 engine screws and get the pull starter replaced, and then once the engine's back in, we're then in a position to drive the car to a car park somewhere where I'm going to start the engine, break it in and hopefully tune it as well. So these engine bolts are usually quite tight, and usually the reason why they snap in the first place is because people try to use Allen keys and stuff like that, and those aren't really good enough. I tend to use a little ratchet which allows you to get a lot of leverage on the bolts, and like so. And another thing to do is make sure that you put the Allen key part, or the hex part, well into the bolt as well, otherwise you end up stripping it. And this one hasn't stripped, it's purely just snapped. So you can see with the right tool, they come straight undone. And you haven't got to go all the way with these. I just tend to do the first half turn just to loosen them off, and then just do the rest with my 2.5mm hex screwdriver. Okay, so that's all 4 of them loose. The ratchet can go to one side, and now we're going to do the rest of it just with the standard screwdriver. And these do work okay, but the thing is, when they're very tight, so when you're doing that first half turn or something, generally you do risk snapping or stripping these because they're not really designed to do the really tight stuff. So let's flip the car back over. And here it is. So now the engine is loose, so let's pull the air filter off, pull the throttle linkage off, like so, and the fuel line, just the exhaust now. You can, if you want to, remove this spring and then take the manifold off, but I find it easier just to leave the manifold on and just remove it this way, and that way you don't have to contend with this nasty spring here. Okay, so there's your engine. Looks very nice. It's your Mach 28 6-port engine, one of my favourite engines. So let's go ahead now and get this pull starter replaced. Hobao to put this little bit of thing on the rear, and that's just to stop the spring mechanism from flicking out. And then this one simply slides onto there, and then we just need to install these 4 screws, and we're going to use a little bit of Loctite on those. A little bit of Loctite on the screws, and then we're going to replace these 4 onto the engine. Now, you don't want to be doing these screws up too tight, because if you do, then you will actually end up compressing and ruining the plastic, because this plastic's quite soft. So you want them to be snug, but as soon as they bite, I tend to stop. And you've got, like I say, you've got a little bit of thread lock on there anyway. But as soon as they bite, like that, ideally you want to stop. Otherwise, you're only going to end up ruining your pull starter housing. Okay, last one going in. I'm not a massive fan of these COPS pull starters. I've never really understood the point of them, if I'm honest. And just like I always say, when the engine's out, it would be rude not to give this area a little clean. I mean, this car's very new, but it must have been driven, because it does have some grass and stuff on it. He tells me it's yet to be broken in, so I'm going to break it in and just assume that it's new, so that's fine. So let's sit that one back into position then. I like to replace the exhaust manifold first, and like I explained in my previous videos, the reason why I do that is purely just because it holds the engine somewhat in place for you, ready to get those 4 screws in. So putting the engine screws back in now. Again, going to use a little bit of thread lock on these ones, because they are subject to engine vibrations. Now we need to make sure that we set the gear mesh properly, so I'm not going to tighten these all of the way. I'm just getting them in there, and now we're going to set the gear mesh. You just need a little strip of paper, which I'm going to slide between the gears. Got my hand underneath. I'm just going to turn the spur gear there, and you can see that takes in the paper, and now slide the engine in towards the gear, and that usually gives you a good gear mesh. So with that pushed in now towards the gear with the paper between, just going to turn the car back over again, and I'm just going to tighten up just 2 of these screws, because there's no point doing them all the way yet, because we do need to check. So that's just enough there so that the engine won't move. Turn it back over, remove the paper, and now check. Now just by sound I can tell that that's okay. And then when we're definitely happy, taking the ratchet and just doing them up all of the way. And we're not going to go crazy with them, because 1, they've got thread lock on, and 2, we don't want to go crazy with them. If we go too mad, no one will get them undone again. But those are really snug and in there nicely now. Good. Okay, so that's the engine now replaced into the car, so in theory it is ready to start. I'm just going to do a few little checks here just before I take the car out. So I'm just going to first check the glow plug's working. So the glow plug condition looks okay. Let's just test it. And you can see we've got there a bright orange glow, so we know that the glow plug is working fine. And with glow plugs, we don't want to do them up too tight, we just want to do them snug. So that's kind of biting there, and then I'm just going to go like that, and that's all we need to do with glow plugs. So for the high speed needle, this engine is screw it down all of the way, and when you're screwing it down you need to be careful. It's just until resistance is met. So there's the resistance, and then we reopen it 4.5 times. So there's 1 turn, 2 turns, 3 turns, 4 turns and a half. The mid-range needle should be flush with the carb body. It doesn't look like that one's been adjusted or touched, so I'm not going to touch that either. So the low speed needle should be screwed in all of the way and then reopened 2.5 full turns. So there's 1, there's 2, and there's half. Okay, so we now know that these engine default settings are set to the factory default settings. Now that's not to say that those settings are any good, but they're usually settings that will allow the engine to at least fire up, and then we can work from there. So I'm going to take this car now to a car park area where we can start it up and allow it to break in. My plan is to do the Mach 28 break-in method, which on this one is 3 tanks idle and then a further 2 tanks sort of driving around and starting to tune up the engine. So that's what I'm planning to do. But apart from that, it looks pretty nice. These batteries are already in here and I've just checked everything's working fine. So I think we're now ready to go ahead and get this one started. Okay, good stuff. So we're here now then at this on-road area. Just going to do a little radio check. Brakes are good, steering's nice, so everything's working as it should do. Now I'm going to be running his car on OptiFuel 25%. 30% works really well in these engines, but 30% here in the UK at least is quite difficult to get hold of. So I'm going to use OptiFuel 25%. OptiFuel is readily available, so it'd be nice and easy for the guy who owns this just to go ahead and buy some OptiFuel. So I'm going to use 25%, just going to fill up the tank. So let's get it primed then. I'm going to remove the back pressure line and just blow into it. I think that did it, not sure. Could often tell just by pulling the starter. A little bit more going in. Okay, I know there's fuel in there now, so let's just try to start it. He said to me there's a problem with starting it, struggling to keep it running, so we've checked the glow plug, it's got fuel in there, and also I've returned all of the tuning needles to their factory default settings, so I see no reason why it shouldn't start. Seems to be singing quite happily now. A little bit of tuning went on, so I'm just going to let it sing now for 3 full tanks as per Hobao's recommendation for this engine. I'll be keeping a close eye on the engine temperatures as well. Once that's done, we've then got 2 further tanks to do a little bit of driving and tuning, so I'll catch you guys in about 3/4 of an hour when that's finished singing through 3 full tanks. See you shortly. Okay, lovely. So it's just sat through 3 full tanks idling. Pretty rich setting. Lots of smoke out the exhaust, some fuel spitting out the exhaust as well. Now I'm going to move on to tanks 4 and 5, which Hobao say just drive around with no periods, long periods of full throttle, starting to put a little bit of a tune on it. So I think for tank 4, which is the next one, I'm just going to drive it around, just lots of bursts of the gas, and then on the 5th tank I'll start the tuning process. And then once that's done, pretty much give it a little clean, probably pop in a new glow plug because he has got one of those, a little bit of afterburn oil, and then send it off back to him. So let's restart it. I've just refueled it already. Got a nice lot of blue smoke from the exhaust because it's running nice and rich. So I'm going to do this then for the next tank. Towards the end of this tank I'll start to use a little bit more acceleration, and then on the next tank I'll start to tune this one for performance. This isn't really a tutorial, just doing this video for your guys' benefit, just to see, you know, fixing up someone else's car and how I'm approaching it. So I'll pop a couple of links down in the description below where you can view some videos if you want to look at these in more detail, actually want to learn how to do it.